When you get out, people are like, what's next? They're never, what did you just go through? And it's important to reflect on that time because it has brought you to where you are now and where you're going.
Someone cares about you.
There's a reason why your heart is beating.
You still have a purpose.
Don't give up.
It's important to know that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Daily physical activity like taking a walk can benefit everyone. And while walking has many physical benefits, it's also been shown to help us relax, manage stress, improve our moods, and reduce the likelihood of depression. So as you head out on your mile-long walk, thank you for joining me here as I talk with today's guest, Navy veteran Jenna Carlton. Years ago, Jenna founded the Millennial Veterans Facebook group for younger veterans and transitioning service members trying to navigate life after service to share relatable content. As the community has grown, Jenna continues her mission to make the veteran community a better place for all through her weekly podcast, Vet Chats, and writing the Veteran Workbook. Jenna, welcome to the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Hello. Hi, Danny. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
While our listeners remember to start their Strava fitness tracker to log their miles, would you mind sharing what it was like growing up in rural Wisconsin?
It was awesome. I really had a great childhood. We get intense winters, so we had snow. I grew up skiing, snowmobiling, four-wheeling. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
From what I understand, the area that you were at was like incredibly small, and I didn't even know it existed on the map because, to be honest, I didn't know that Michigan wrapped around to the north of Wisconsin.
That is something I love educating people on because, yes, I was right on the border. I could throw a rock and hit Michigan. That's why I was born in Michigan because it was the closest hospital. But the town I grew up in had about little less than 2,000 people, and I graduated with 36 kids, to give you an idea. That's why when I say I won prom queen, my husband says it was by default. So don't brag about that.
No, I love that. So you're really familiar with just kind of small town living and wilderness in general.
Yes. Yeah. You really didn't have a choice up there. I mean, I knew all about hunting and stuff, and my husband just got into it. And he's like surprised at how much I actually know already. And I'm like, well, you just grow up around that stuff. It's second nature to you, even though my dad didn't hunt. But yeah, stuff like that you just pick up on.
So what made you want to join the Navy instead of any other branch then?
So although it was a great place to grow up, the small town atmosphere, there's just not a lot of opportunity. And so I knew I wanted to experience more in the world. And I went to visit my uncle my junior year, and he was down in Pensacola, Florida. And he joined the Navy and he never went back to Michigan. So he was just talking me into it because I was unsure about college or what I wanted to do. And he's like, I think that'd be great for you, Jenna. You should join. And so that seed was kind of planted. And then later on, I was just like, I heard of one of my friends joining, and I was like, all right, tell your recruiter, like, sign me up. And yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
Oh, wow. So what did your uncle do in the Navy? I know Pensacola is very heavy in the aviation, but it's also like crypt CTs and intel as well.
He was a torpedo man back in the day, which is now a part of the AOs. And yeah, he was not aviation, but.
Oh, right on. And where did your naval career end up taking you then?
So I was in Biloxi, Mississippi for my A school. I got to be at an Air Force base, which I felt spoiled. Their dining facility had amazing food, and I remember sending pictures to all my friends who are still in Great Lake, Chicago, and they are in cement floors, metal bunk beds, and I actually have carpeted room and like a nice, it kind of looked like it was a small bed, but it just looked way nicer than what they were, what they had. And after that, I got stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was sea duty. And because I was an aerographer's mate, I did weather. We aren't stationed on ships, but we are. They will request us to go to ships as needed. So I kind of got to bounce around a little bit, and then I ended up deploying on an aircraft carrier.
So talk to me about that deployment with the aircraft carrier. When I had joined, my initial school was down in Pensacola as well. I was trying to follow my older brother's footprints. He was actually an AO in the Navy, Aviation Ordnance Men. stationed on a carrier, and I was hoping to kind of follow his career path and do a med cruise just like my aunt, my father, my brother, and other people in my family. But I never got the opportunity. So could you share your experience of what it was like deploying with a carrier strike group?
It was really cool, and it was such a great way to learn about the world because, we were crossing the ocean, but also kind of the politics of the world. I became really interested in that and, why are we over here? What are we doing here? And things were shifting in the political realm around us being there. So it was just kind of an interesting time to be there. This was 2015, 2016 era. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. And you're on a ship with 5,000 people. This is bigger than my whole town that I grew up in. And that was so much fun for me to just meet people of all different backgrounds. I love that.
Now, as you were going from a town of 2,000 people, growing up 18 years, spending your entire life, now you're on an aircraft carrier, which is nearly 5,000 people. Very transitory because people are always getting stationed there and leaving even in the middle of a deployment. What was that culture like for you to adjust to being this your first time out of Michigan for a long term, or sorry, Wisconsin for a long term?
Yeah, I claim them both. It was exciting, and I was really independent. I also grew up an only child, so I wasn't really, missing family too much. I was just ready to, go on an adventure, and I was excited to see new countries and new cultures, and really, you got to get in with the right people on the ship too. You got to form those connections so you can get your laundry done a little faster, or if you don't like what they're serving on the mess decks and you want another option, you got to befriend someone else. So it was fun for me to navigate the whole cultural aspect of being on a carrier as well.
Now, my older brother was actually stationed on the Truman when it was commissioned. I got to do a Tiger cruise in the 8th grade, so I got to ride on it for about 2 weeks. After they commissioned it and Bill Clinton came out and did his whole speech. And that's kind of the beginning of my naval journey. It was the second time I was ever on a ship, first time when I was like 3 years old with my dad. But I remember from the time that my brother joined until I stopped drinking at 27, how much alcohol and partying was a part of the military culture, especially in the junior ranks. How did that environment impact you as a young woman away from home and experiencing this much larger world and culture for the first time?
Yes. Yeah. Drinking was already a big part of my life from high school. Even in Wisconsin, you can drink with your parents at a bar as long as the bartender is okay with it. I mean, drinking is really a part of that culture in Wisconsin. And so that was just one of my only tool to make friends a lot of the time. So I drank a lot to meet friends and to make connections. But especially on deployment, because you are not allowed to drink on the ship and you get into port and you just want to let loose. I mean, you're working 12-hour shifts for 40 days in a row. And a lot of times I would be switched from days to nights, but I worked more nights and I just wanted to let loose. And that's kind of how I did that, was drinking a lot.
So when you're around this culture, hitting ports and drinking, did you really, do you feel like your time spent during your deployments and stuff, you were really getting kind of a personal growth that you were seeking in the Navy?
I did. I thought I made a lot of personal growth, and it was a great time for reflection. I have a lot of journals that I wrote on deployment and that I look back on, and I'm like, wow, like some of the stuff I was saying, I'm like, I was really impressed with myself. I was 21 at the time, and yeah, I grew a lot, and I really thought, like, it's crazy when you're 21 and you're going through all that, you're seeing the world like that, you feel like you've almost done everything. And that's kind of how I was writing. Like, I've done so much before I turned 22. I can't even picture the rest of my life, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those unique experiences when we visit back home and we see the same friends kind of doing the same thing. And now we have stories of world travel, and we can kind of look at our lives and go, things are absolutely amazing. I mean, yeah, I deal with some suck here and there, but for the most part, like, I really love my job, and the appeal to stay in is really there. But you made a decision to get out after your 4 years, and what led to that decision?
I wasn't too crazy about weather, and I tried to cross-rate a few times, but because weather's such a small community, they weren't really letting people out of the rate. So I decided if I wanted to pursue something that I was interested in, I would have to go to college. So I decided to get out and follow my then boyfriend, who got stationed up here in Maryland, and find the closest college and go for what I wanted to do, which was I wanted to be a teacher at the time.
Okay. Was there anything that you wanted to teach in particular?
I wanted to teach elementary, probably history or reading or some sort of literature.
That's that's awesome. I love the idea of teaching. It was something that I wanted to do since like the 7th grade, was to be a math teacher. The furthest I ever got was tutoring, and then teaching just kind of is what I did a lot in the Navy for nearly 11 years.
Yes, yeah, I like that about the Navy, how they encourage mentorship, and there is opportunities and even volunteer opportunities. I did a lot of volunteering at a school once a week through the Navy, which was a lot of fun. I think that's what kind of inspired me to want to teach. And my mom's a teacher too.
Well, and now you're podcasting, and honestly, like, talking to people, interviewing, getting a sense of their history, their personal history. We don't just podcast to hear ourselves talk. I mean, I don't think you're probably kind of like me. I don't like listening to my own voice, but I love talking to people and learning about them and sharing their journeys with others.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this definitely fills my need because I now work from home. I ended up doing something completely different from teaching. I work for the government. I do contracts, and I work completely from home. So unless I'm calling my coworkers to bother them, I don't get any interaction during the day. So I love this.
Oh my goodness. And then, so when you had gotten out, you decided to do the school, I'm assuming, and kind of start to pursue a path of teaching. What did that transition look like for you?
So I started taking my gen ed courses, and I'm pretty close to DC. So I started getting interested in policy and kind of politics of it. And that was kind of also peaked when I mentioned when I was on deployment, I was really interested in international affairs. And so I kind of went that route. And then I signed up for an internship in DC. And that's when my professor was like, hey, what are you interested in? Like, who would you want to work for on the Hill? And I was I'm in the middle of politics. So I didn't want to say, okay, Democrats, Republicans. I was like, I really don't know. And he's like, well, you're a veteran, right? Why don't you do something in the veteran space? And I was like, I am a veteran. You're right. It was kind of one of those points that it hit me like, yes, you're a veteran. I mean, you can claim that now. And why not go and see what that world's like in the political arena? And so that's what I did. I did an internship at the House Committee on Veterans Affairs one summer, which was really cool. It was really eye-opening to me and made me passionate about helping veterans.
We're working for the VA and Veterans Affairs and people that work in that space. We have an opportunity to learn a lot and see a lot of issues that the general public and even other veterans and military members may never be aware of. How policy kind of guides things or why things are slow. And so I always encourage as many people as I can, like, start to learn about the VA, start to actually learn about the people that work there, because there are really, really good-hearted people up against kind of tremendous obstacles when it comes to care and benefits.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like even my schooling before that did not prepare me for how the government works and how, so many people are angry with the government. Why don't they fix this? And it's like, it just doesn't work like that. And so that was also eye-opening to me. And even after that, I was like, okay, I don't want to work in DC. It's just too far. They don't make that much money. So yeah, I was like, all right, I need to find something else to do.
So is that what eventually led you to doing the Millennial Veteran Facebook group then?
Yes. Yeah, I thought that would be a great way to help my friends. And because after word got out, I did the internship, I was getting a lot of phone calls as my more and more friends were starting to leave the military. They would call me and say, hey, I need help with benefits, or what do you know about this? And I was like, I'm just going to put all of you in a Facebook group. And I have two of my friends. One of my friend, Angela, she's still in. And then my other friend, Missy, is also out. They help me admin it. So we're all the admins of the Facebook group. And then more people just started adding their friends and their friends. And it kind of grew into what it is now, which is a lot of times I don't even know the people in the group anymore. Personally.
Well, I mean, how can you have personal relationships with everybody that is in there? Such a large group at this point, and so many different chat features for people to get involved and connected and supported. What problems do you think that the Millennial Veterans Groups is helping people solve at this point?
A lot of them are just those benefit questions that you can't Google. They're very circumstantial of, okay, or even like home loan things like I'm trying to sell my house, but I want to take another VA loan, that sort of thing, those nuanced questions that you can't just find on a website. And that's what a lot of people help with. And it's a lot of experience-based advice. Well, I did this when I was in that situation. Why don't you try this sort of thing, which I think is really cool. And Chat GPT can't do that yet.
Not quite. I mean, with groups like this, obviously, there's a little bit of a screening process and obviously moderators. And it sounds like you have a great team moderating because the content's very clean, very helpful. And I see that you guys do work on keeping kind of like that toxic talk out of there, that it's a very like safe place for people to go and connect.
Right. And that was hard to foster that environment at first because, veterans, there's just like this idea of veterans that we needed to kind of change that. There's a lot of biases. There's a lot of just sort of humor that isn't funny, maybe more towards women or women veterans that we just needed to cut out or, make examples of people a few times when they would try to post stuff like that. But I mean, now and then you still get people like that, and that's why it helps to have admins and other moderators in there.
One of the things that I've heard you say a few times as I listen to your podcast, follow your posts, is you talk about the environment of veterans is there's the older generation who may not be willing or know how to actually connect with younger veterans, and we don't necessarily feel comfortable in there. And I 100% understand that. Out in Hawaii, we're very special because community is a lot of what we promote anyways, just as a culture. And so like when we go to a veteran service office, it's already very welcoming, but I know that that's not the case in a lot of areas in America. And then you also have this other dynamic of veterans like myself who have gone to deployments and done multiple combat tours. We sustain physical, mental injuries from this. However, we start to alienate other veterans. We start to say, well, you're not part of this group. And I understand that I hear a lot of veterans, even my older brother who didn't engage in direct combat was part of the Navy during the initial invasion in his carrier strike group that was over there in Afghanistan loading bombs on planes. And it took me about almost 17 years to finally convince him to go into the VA and start getting his claims because he just didn't feel like he belonged to the veteran community. And I understand you're working on changing that perception with your group, and so much so that you're now filing your first claim.
Yes. Yeah. And that's so true. And that's the case for so many veterans out there. It's almost like you have to be deserving enough, or something I like to say, are you veteran enough, has been such a common theme in our community. And honestly, this is what I learned, even when I didn't take the identity of veteran seriously when I was working at the House Committee. I would get phone calls from veterans, it was a lot of Vietnam era veterans calling. They didn't even know who they were calling, but they would call and they would, just me saying, hey, I'm a fellow veteran, would almost feel like they were more understood. it was crazy because I am a 25-year-old woman, and just me saying, hey, I'm a veteran. They didn't even know my experience. It was totally different from what they went through in Vietnam, but they felt more comfortable calling me. They would call and say, hey, is Jenna there? I need to talk to Jenna, because they wanted to talk to another veteran. And I thought that was so powerful, because just being another veteran, we all have such different experiences of what we went through, and all of our experiences were out of our control. You couldn't really decide, okay, I want to be deployed. You know, so many people wanted to be deployed and couldn't. So many people didn't want to be deployed and couldn't. You know, that was all of out of our control. But we all signed that dotted line in service of our country, and that's what we have in common, and that is way more powerful than any other stereotype or gatekeeping method that other veterans have. So
I love that you're working on making sure that people know that a veteran's a veteran, regardless of your length of service, where you served, and the job you did. We, again, like you just mentioned, we all agreed to make a sacrifice. We were actually told how much our life was worth when we signed up in the amount of a life insurance policy, that if something happens to you, this is what your family gets. And we all agreed to that. And that takes tremendous effort. And then, you know, one of the things that I always encourage veterans to do is sign up for your VA healthcare, regardless of whether or not you're going to use the services, because the VA will receive funding for you as a patient if you just go there once a year for an annual checkup.
yeah, that's a great point too. You know, I haven't heard it phrased that way, and I'm going to use that, because that's a great point. You know, you're helping out the VA and helping out other veterans by signing up.
Exactly. I got my father he got out of the Navy in 88, and when I started portraying that to him, because he has veteran buddies that are having a hard time, and they complain about how hard it is to navigate the VA healthcare system because they're understaffed and unable to get appointments. And when I told him, I was like, Dad, if you sign up for healthcare and you don't have to go to a bunch of appointments, they're going to receive money for you. And immediately he started working on his claimant application. And I'm super proud of him for making that effort, because it's like less than half of eligible veterans actually sign up. And it's because of that stigma that you're talking about, not feeling like they belong there.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And I think conversations like these and just putting out that transparent information is how we can get more veterans into the fold. And once they're on the VA's radar a little more, you know, they're actually proven to be more likely to seek help. And these veterans, you know, especially that first year when you're getting out of service, is the highest risk of suicide. So we need to get these veterans in as soon as we can.
Absolutely. Well, I love that you're sharing resources and answers to questions from the veteran community. And it's not just you sharing it, it's those that are showing up to help each other out. But in addition to the veterans group, you ended up launching the Vet Chats on Sunday night. It's primarily on Instagram Live, but I know that you have it on other platforms. But it's a live conversation that you have with veterans. What was the inspiration behind talking to other veterans about their experiences in a live format like that?
So when we started the group, people were just reaching out and saying what they are doing now, how they're continuing their service. And I was just so inspired by it. And I thought, I really want to highlight these stories, because I feel like Millennial gets such a bad name, and younger veterans, you know, they kind of get this rap for not caring about the veteran community. They don't care about the legacy. They don't care about the Legion, the VFW. But what do they care about? How can we bring them into the fold of our awesome community that we already have? So I just wanted to highlight those stories through conversations and just invite more veterans. By seeing two younger veterans talk, maybe they'd be more encouraged to go and get their benefits, or tell other people, or claim that identity of veteran themselves.
And I think you're coming up, you had mentioned earlier, on the 3-year mark with Vet Chats. How have you seen the conversation among your listeners change and grow?
Yes, I mean, a lot of it's dependent on Instagram that I see, but it's been really cool just to see more people involved and more people interested and just acknowledge that younger veterans are out here doing great stuff and they want to continue the legacy that the veteran community has already paved a way for so long.
That's really awesome. And, work like yours, we can start to actually see amongst our peers that conversation grow, people becoming more and more accepting, especially as these podcasts like ours continue to reach more and more audiences. People are going, oh, wow, like we are not alone in this circumstance. And so that hard exterior that we have as a veterans begins to soften and people actually have those real conversations. So thank you for the tremendous work that you started doing there. Gosh, that must have started around the time of the height of the pandemic then.
It was the end of it. It was December 2020.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for getting that started and working on that. Now, you are not shy about your love of journaling. You even mentioned earlier that, when you were 21, you look back on those journals that you had from your deployments, you go, man, I was on to something, but I've even grown so much more from them. And you love it so much that you've decided to help others start journaling. Your teacher instincts have kicked in and you said, hey, how do we get people actually journaling in a healthy and productive way? And you've started them on their journey to their own journaling. But what benefits have you gained from your own experience with writing about your experiences and feelings?
It has helped me process a lot. I mean, I'm a daily journaler. So it just helps me process each day and make each day feel like it really counts when you go back and think about it. Because when you're just moving through days and days, you're not really picking out what's significant about them and they can all run together. But if you really practice mindfulness and what actually happened today, what are the thoughts I had today, it really helps you show your progress and that you are growing and you're progressing every day. So yeah, it's helped me a lot. And then I was inspired by a lot of the conversations that I was having on the key struggles that people had during transition. And I wanted a way to expand on those thoughts. What questions am I asking my guests that I could also ask every veteran, or that they could ask themselves through this workbook, and really dig into those thoughts of identity, of accountability, of forgiving yourself, or honoring who you were, or planning for the future, because we don't think about all of that stuff. And especially asking questions on reflecting on service, because when you get out, people are like, what's next? They're never, what did you just go through? And it's important to reflect on that time because it has brought you to where you are now and where you're going.
Absolutely. For years when I started my mental health journey, 12 years ago at this point, when I was 27, they always tried to encourage me to journal as much as I could, and I would start to write stuff down. It's part of that therapeutic process, but I was never really consistent with it because staring at a blank page just paralyzes me. I'm like, I don't know what to write about. I'm not that important. I don't really have things going on. I mean, and so I would read back and I would kind of be a little embarrassed because journaling was not something that I ever really liked doing. I liked math and science versus English. And so writing was just not something that I engaged with. But your workbook gives me something that I absolutely love when I am working through issues or trying to learn something new, is that you give us tasks, you give us questions. You do a little bit of teaching, you have fun quotes in there, and then you ask us to kind of reflect. So in the veteran workbook, you go through primarily 4 topics that are important for people in transition, not just veterans. Like, this is something that veterans really need to understand, is that we're people too. We're not just veterans. And a lot of the things that the outside world experiences actually applies to us, and vice versa. We have something to offer the civilian world, and they have something to offer us. But would you mind talking through these 4 stages of transitions, especially targeted at veterans?
Yes, absolutely. So the first one is recreating yourself, because a lot of people say I'm lost when they get out, but you can't really find yourself. You have to recreate yourself, because you're not out there to find, you can't go back to who you were before the military, regardless of the trolls in my comments would say different. But you can't. That person doesn't exist. You're shaped by your military experience. So that's a part of one category, which takes you through several themes. Another one is recreating structure. Like you mentioned, a blank page freaked you out, and that's because you're in the military. You like structure. We thrive on structure. So adding that framework back to your life is so important, whether it's finding out your routine or creating healthy habits are all things that you go through. The next one is planning for your future, because that a lot of that was taken away from us. We didn't have control over where we went, where we were stationed, how long we were going to be deployed. So I'm giving you permission. You can plan your future again. You can make goals. You can reach things. So that's what that's about. And the last one is, reflect on your service. Yes, which I already mentioned it before, but yes, you need to reflect on what you've just gone through and how it's shaped you, and talk about it. And so many of us aren't ready to talk with other people, but you can talk with yourself. Find those words with yourself, because that's going to empower you and give you courage to talk to someone else.
Those are some great starting points for getting people, and they're so basic and simple, but it's not easy, especially when you're being honest. Sometimes we're trying to kind of placate our own ego in our therapies, even, where we lie to our therapist about what we're really feeling. I know I'm really guilty of that. Or in my writing, I know that nobody else is going to read it when I journal. Like even my wife, who will sit next to me sometimes while I'm journaling, just because we like spending time together. Like, I know that she's not looking over my shoulder, but I get embarrassed about the words that are going to go down in there.
Right. It's like we all have a little bit of Truman Show energy in us, where we feel like everything we do is just magnified and the whole world is really watching. But you're right. No one's going to read it. Read or write as if you're going to burn it. That's how I say it. That's the best way to be honest.
I love it. And then with these workbooks, after they're done with the journey, what do you kind of encourage people to do with their veteran workbook afterwards?
Afterwards, you could keep it. I keep all my journals ever since second grade, when I could really write. I've kept them all because I just think they're great landmarks in your life that you can go back and look on. Or maybe you're a spouse whose husband or wife has served, so then you could be like, well, this is what I went through, and you could really go back to that point in your life and explain what you were going through for them. Or you can burn it. You could, if you feel like you want to close that chapter and you're ready for this new life, go ahead. I think that would be fun. But eventually I would like to come out with a second one and address even deeper issues that we have through being a veteran, or just a person in general. Just go a little deeper into the complex mind.
And it's a beautiful thing. I love that the Veteran Workbook is a great tool to get people started, or even just continuing their journey, because anytime you ask yourself a question, even if it's the same question, your answers may change over time. So I encourage anybody, if you have an opportunity, go to Jenna Carlton's places, and where are those places that they can find you and your workbook?
So if you go on Instagram, I'm the Millennial Veteran, and if you click the link in my bio, that's the best way to find it. It is on Amazon, but you can't search for it yet. So yes, go through the link in my bio and I'll take you right to it. And it's $9.99. I made it super cheap because I want to get it in the hands of as many veterans as I can.
I love it. And, I look forward to picking up a copy in person when we get to run into each other at the what is it, the Military Influencer Conference?
The MIC.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
And so
they're calling it the MIC.
The MIC. We love our acronyms, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Well, I really appreciate this time that you've come on the 1 Mile 1 Veteran podcast. And as you know, we really encourage our listeners to really reflect on what it means to be a veteran, what it means to be healthy, and the small steps that they can take. However, we also know that many of our veterans are still struggling in life and unfortunately dying by suicide. Do you have any words of hope that you would like to bring to somebody that is currently experiencing a crisis?
We have all been there, and it feels like you are paralyzed. You can't move forward. But even if you can do the tiniest thing today, if you could just do something really small, like even brushing your teeth or just going outside for a brief moment for even 5 minutes, just something to get you moving or get your blood pumping. I mean, that is already such a small step that you could take today, and it will pass. And never be afraid to reach out for help. That is so important, and it's so hard. But please just even take a step today, reaching out to a community, maybe joining a new Facebook group, maybe listening to a new podcast that can inspire you, just something to get you out of that. So.
Absolutely great advice, Jenna. And thank you so much for sharing your journey here with me on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful.
And to our audience, thank you for listening to Jenna's story during your walk today. Don't forget to log it in the Strava app and join our virtual walking group, 1 Mile, 1 Veteran, to find the motivation to get active every day.